Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ngā mihi nui ki a koutou, nau mai, haere mai ki tēnei hui. Ko kurahaupo te waka, ko rangatake te awa, ko tai korea te maunga, ko ngati apa ki bulls tuku iwi, engare e tipu ake au i tautoro. Ko Pare Wānui me ngā rātana o ku marae, ko Barry Barclay toku papa, ko Sue James toku mama, ko Damon Himiona hoa rangatira, ko Chase toku tama, ko Belinda toku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, it's my real pleasure to get to settle us into today with a karakia. Just like to welcome distinguished guests and all the wahine tour that have been acknowledged, and thank you for that welcome, Loretta. So we will begin with a karakia. Karakia timatanga. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi ake ana a tākura, hi tio e he huka, hi hauhunga, ti hei mauri ora. Kia ora koutou.
No mai, haere mai, ko Katie Bulkley, aha, no reire, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome, and all the mother tongues here present. And for my mother tongue, howdy. How's it going this morning? I'm a little girl from Texas who is now a Kiwi, and it's really great to be with you. I come from a long line of not morning people. In our religion of my family, we don't get up before 7, and we sure as hell don't speak till 9. So each year, this is the one day of the year, I consent to getting up this early because you guys are worth it. So I'm so glad to be here, and I'm so glad you're here. It's my role today to welcome you to this breakfast and to tell you about Zonta, one of the organizers of this event. First, I'd like to begin with recognizing the heads of the diplomatic missions in New Zealand and their excellencies, the ambassadors and high commissioners from Australia, Egypt, the European Union, France, Indonesia, Malaysia, Samoa, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom, the United States, and Timor-Leste. We also welcome Dame Diana Crossland and Zonta's own Dame Margaret Sparrow. Margaret has just been named the Senior New Zealander of the Year, so just really proud to see that. We welcome our MPs that are here today, Jan Logie, and of course our host, my fellow Kiwi American, the Honorable Julianne Genter. I'd also like to welcome the students and teachers from the Hutt Valley Teen Parent School, Te Kura, Hutt Valley High, Kapiti College, Onslow College, St. Mary's College, Samuel Marsden Collegiate School, Tawa College, and my personal favorite, Wellington Girls College. We welcome to all our friends who are joining us through the live streaming. We have so many people that have registered to live stream today in New Zealand and beyond, sort of like Buzz Lightyear. This includes 10 schools, and the number of people live streaming grows and grows every year, and it's very exciting to see. Lastly, but certainly not least, I would also like to recognize the men who have joined us this morning at Parliament and on the live stream. Each of you is very welcome. I'm Katie Bulkley, and I'm the president of the Zonta Club of Wellington. We're one of 30 clubs in New Zealand, and there's just over 1,400 clubs worldwide. Zonta is made up of 29,000 members in 63 countries. What is Zonta? We're a global service organization, and we focus on the empowering of women and girls through service and advocacy. We make a difference in Wellington, in New Zealand, and across the globe. Locally, the Wellington Club supports Shakti, which are the women's refuges for women from Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. We also support the Wellington Homeless Women's Trust and the Hutt Valley Teen Parents School. Across New Zealand, we support PADA, which is the Perinatal Anxiety and Depression Aotearoa organization. They do incredible work supporting brand new families, and their goal is to eliminate the stigmas around perinatal mental health. Zonta is also involved in advocating for legislative initiatives that support women's empowerment, such as the Domestic Violence Victims Protection Bill. At the international level of Zonta, we work to improve the lives of women and girls by supporting initiatives like End Child Marriage. And that effort is key in helping keeping girls in school. So a very important thing to be working on right now. We promote women in STEM subjects with the biennial Zonta Science Award. In May, in this very room, we will celebrate the 16th postdoctoral scientist to be recognized with the Zonta Science Award. Since 1990 and the establishment of the award, Zonta Wellington has provided $161,000 to New Zealand women in science. That recognition positively impacts the awardees' careers for many years to come. And of course, each year we work with UN Women to put on this breakfast. Our speakers today are strong women who have all overcome challenges to make the most of themselves. And in turn, they have each given generously to their own communities in their own way. We'll hear first from the Honorable Julianne Genter, Minister for Women, Associate Minister of Health, and Associate Minister for Transport. I did enjoy the easy commute today at Oh God 30. Thank you, Julianne. I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say this morning. We're also fortunate to have Tiana Apati, President of the New Zealand Law Society, speaking to us. She is the first Pacific descendant and the youngest ever president of the Law Society. Our final speaker will be Dr. Taukilupe Taumaui Peo. I had help with that. She is a female vascular surgeon in New Zealand of Tongan descent. She's the only Polynesian vascular surgeon in all of Australasia. It's an impressive group of women. Why do I look forward to IWD every year? I love this event. For me personally, it gives me the time to think about where we are today, how far we've come, especially in New Zealand. It's fantastic what New Zealand has done for women and will keep doing. And I like to look forward to how much there is left to do. So to let us all celebrate all women and girls today, celebrate our strengths, our dreams, our determination, and commit to creating an equal and enabled world. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'll now invite Sue Kedgley, a member of UN Women Aotearoa New Zealand, to introduce our host this morning, the Honorable Julianne Genter. Sue.
O kia ora koutou ngā mihi nui, and I'm Sue Kedgley from UN Women, and it's a real privilege to introduce the Honourable Julianne Genter, the Minister for Women, who is hosting our breakfast today. And I was just reflecting that it was 50 years ago that women's liberation, back in 1970, burst onto the scene in New Zealand, the second wave, some say, of feminism, and we were, some of us who are here today were members back then, and we were determined that we were going to liberate women and bring about gender equality in a matter of years. So here we are, half a century later, and still there is so much unfinished business. So I think we are very fortunate indeed to have a Minister for Women who is a proud feminist and a powerful advocate for women in government. And so I'd just like to take an opportunity to acknowledge the Minister's leadership on many of the intractable issues that still face women today, such as addressing the gender pay gap, countering bias and discrimination in the workplace, extending pay equity, particularly to the low-paid, most marginal groups in our society, all of whom turn out to be women, ensuring there are more women in leadership on boards and in leadership positions generally, encouraging workplace flexibility, and encouraging men, finally, 50 years later, after it was promised it would happen overnight, to share in the domestic life, bringing up children, looking after the home. So we do also appreciate the way the Minister has become something of a role model as she seeks to juggle the demands of raising a delightful young baby still, and pursuing an incredibly demanding and successful career, which we know is no easy task. So please welcome the Minister for Women, the Honourable Julianne Genter. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Nā mihi whakanui kia koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Ririrangi te waka, ko Sierra Nevada nā maunga, ko Yuba te awa, ko te moana nui a kia te moana, ko Ngāti Americana, ko Ngāti Pākehā nā iwi, no Karaponia aho, ko te whanganui a tara tōku kāinga e nāiane, ko Julianne Genter aho. I'd like to begin by welcoming you all this morning and those who are joining us online. And I'd particularly like to thank Sue and Katie for that very warm welcome. Thank you to UN Women and Zonta International for co-hosting this event. It's a fantastic event. It's now the third one I've had the privilege of hosting as Minister for Women. And it's fantastic to see everyone in the morning and remember how important it is to celebrate where we've gotten to, as well as joining together in solidarity with determination for where we have yet to go. I'd like to welcome all of the distinguished guests, including, I believe, my ministerial colleague, Tracy Martin, my parliamentary colleagues, especially Undersecretary Jan Logie, who's doing such important work to end sexual and domestic violence, one of the most important planks of work, I think, in our government for ensuring that women and girls can truly live good lives. And a special welcome to our keynote speakers, Tiana Epati, and Dr. Lupe Tomaupeo. We're so privileged to have you here. Our government, we are working to improve the lives of women and girls in Aotearoa in New Zealand. And some of that work is the work that we just saw the second reading of the bill to finally reform the law around abortion so that we can increase the access and safety of critical health services to all women, and I want to recognize all those women who've been working towards this reform for so long, decades. The work that I've already mentioned being led by my colleague, the Undersecretary Jan Logie, to ensure that right across government, different agencies are working together to support people out there in the community so they have the tools and resources that they need to support women leaving dangerous situations to end sexual and domestic violence. And when I first came into this role, I said my priority was to reduce the gender pay gap. Well, eliminate the gender pay gap. And we started in the core public service, and of course, we are hoping to see progress in the wider public service and the private sector. We're working on many initiatives, and I just wanted to let you know where we've gotten to on the eliminating the gender pay gap. We have an action plan from 2018 to 2020 to accelerate progress towards eliminating the gender pay gap in the public service. And in order to do this, we have all public service chief executives committed to the action plan. They have, for their own organizations, they have their gender pay action plans. We know the commitment of senior leaders is essential to have change in the organizational culture and to get the results that we want to see. And as Sue Kedgley mentioned earlier, it's not just one gender pay gap. In fact, the gender pay gap is far worse for some women, and we have to recognize that. We need to speak about it, and we need to make sure that it's addressed in our actions to close it. So Māori women, Pacifica women, women with disabilities, other migrant women of color, or women who come from refugee backgrounds have a much larger pay gap. They're not being paid fairly for their work. The very least we could do is make sure that people are paid fairly for their work. And that's just the beginning. So the action plan has concrete milestones, and I'm really pleased to share some of the great results. We have a task force between State Services Commission and the Ministry for Women, and the public service gender pay gap dropped to 10.5% in 2019, a decrease of 1.7 percentage points in 1 year. This is the largest reduction since 2002 and the lowest gender pay gap ever recorded for the public service. So that's good progress, but it can't just be the end. Obviously, we have to keep up this momentum to continue to achieve our goals. Women now hold 49.6% of positions in the top 3 tiers of leadership in the public service, the highest since monitoring began, and this is well on the way towards meeting the 50% target. Women now hold 50% of public service chief executive roles, and I'm really pleased to see that finally we're starting to get a little change in which types of organizations women are leading. We have a woman Secretary of the Treasury. We have a woman has just started as Chief Executive of the New Zealand Transport Agency. So when it comes to job size and the areas, it's not just limited to the traditional areas, say, education and social development, where we're used to seeing women leading. Women can lead right across the board. So by the end of 2020, the goal of all agencies is to close any gender pay gaps within the same roles, and all agencies will be operating flexible working by default policies. And of course, the plan is contributing to closing the gaps for Māori, Pacific, Asian women who often experience those greater pay gaps. More targeted action is needed to address the ethnic gender pay gap and to make inequality that is already there visible so that we can fix it. So I'm proud of these initial results, but I got a text from my mother this morning, who lives in the United States. She sent me a link to an article in the New York Times, which I highly recommend you read. And it says, the unpaid work of women is worth $10.9 trillion globally. And my mother said, I want my back pay with interest. I think we're just at the beginning of this conversation, but we must recognize that our economy is not limited to those transactions which are commercial. So everything we currently do when we talk about the health of the economy and what's happening with jobs and pay and incomes, really we're missing out on a big part of the work that is needed for our societies, for our communities to flourish. And we know that the majority of that unpaid work is undertaken by women, and that's a large part of the reason that we have the gender pay gap. It's why we have a retirement savings gap. It's part of the reason why we don't see as many women in leadership roles, because that incredibly important mahi that is undertaken by women in the home, and our world would not function without it. So ahead of International Women's Day on Sunday, I want to reflect on that as well as the themes that are emerging. We have been discussing that this generation is generation equality. The power is in our hands. We're realizing women's rights to create an equal and enabled world. This year, 2020, is a pivotal year for advancing gender equality worldwide as we take stock of the progress made for women's rights since the adoption of the Beijing Platform for Action 25 years ago. So 2020 marks the 5-year milestone towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, the 20th anniversary of UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security, and the 10th anniversary of the establishment of UN Women. With all of these anniversaries in mind, it's been a difficult week for the United Nations because at the last minute they've had to reorganize the annual Commission on the Status of Women, which usually happens in New York because of the health and safety risks of COVID-19. And a decision such as this, so close to the event, I know is upsetting for many who have spent time and money and effort in preparations. I know that many people here will have contributed towards CSW 64, and I just want to recognize your efforts. This does not mean that we need to lose momentum to make change for women and girls. Our core message is that countries do not exist in isolation. We can and must work together on gender equality worldwide, particularly on protecting sexual and reproductive rights around the world, which are under threat in some places, some developed countries, which we will not name, where Katie and I might be from. This is something I think the women's movement has always excelled at, which is working together for a broad range of issues, and it's what we must continue to do. Events such as the spread of COVID-19 are challenges which all countries share, and so it helps us realize, actually, we're all in this together. The different challenges of the world, like climate change and inequality, we're all in this together. And something like an illness, which could affect anyone, and which we all have to work together to prevent, makes it that much more immediate and obvious that we are all in this together, and we must work together if we are going to thrive. In 1910, working women in New York and Europe demanded change to their working conditions. In the same year, International Women's Day was born as a day dedicated to celebrate women and inspire change. I invite all of us to celebrate what Aotearoa New Zealand women have achieved and to look forward to where we all want women to be. I wish you a wonderful International Women's Day, today's breakfast and on Sunday. Thank you. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Hello everyone, I'm Zoe Dewhurst of the Zonta Club for Wellington. On behalf of Zonta, UN Women, everyone here today, and those joining us through live streaming, I would just like to extend a big thank you to Julianne. And we know you are busy, and so we are really grateful for the time you have taken to be our host here at Parliament this morning. Thank you for sharing your insights into policies that seek to create an equal and enabled world for all. Your work on abortion, sexual and domestic violence, reducing the gender pay gap, and promoting women in leadership is making a significant difference to women in New Zealand. These efforts are important to ensuring the efforts of all women in New Zealand are recognised and acknowledged. So please join me in thanking Julianne. It is my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Te Ana Ipati. As you know, Tiana is the president of the Law Society. She is the first woman of Pacifica descent and one of the youngest people to hold this role, an achievement that is well deserved given her remarkable career. After many years working as a Crown prosecutor in Auckland and Wellington, Tania started in the criminal law team at Crown Law in 2008. Her move to Gisborne in 2012 saw her work as a criminal defence lawyer, where she quickly became a partner at Rushworth Wall and Matheson. Through her work in the law, Tiana has a history of creating a more equal and enabled world and has become a strong advocate for those in the criminal law system. For me personally, as a young lawyer, Tiana is an inspiration and reminds us that we should aim high while enabling others. I look forward to seeing her continue to make her mark on the legal system. So please join me in welcoming Tiana Ipati.
Kei ngā mana, kei ngā reo, kei oku mana wāhine, kei oku tuakana, kei oku mārei kura. Tēnei rā, taku mihi nui ki a koutou katoa. Ka huri aku mihi ki ngā mana o tēnei whenua, te ati awa tēnā koutou. Ka huri ki ngā rangatira hui nei, Minister Genta, tēnā koe. Ka tī nei rā e kupuiti me ngā kaunui e mihi nei tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Well, good morning and a very warm Aotearoa greetings to you all. I'm going to begin my speech with a little story from Hollywood about an American woman. The recent run of the New Zealand film Jojo Rabbit in the awards season led me to think about gender equality, in particular how women fare in probably one of the most privileged classes in the world. Michelle Williams is an award-winning Hollywood actor. She won her first Emmy recently for her role in the TV series Fosse Verdon. In her speech, she applauded the TV network FX for paying her exactly the same as her male co-star Sam Rockwell. Now, this may not seem like a big deal, but what made it meaningful was that Williams had previously made headlines for receiving less than $1,000 for her reshoot work on the ironically named film All the Money in the World. It was reshot after Christopher Plummer took over the lead role, and incredibly, her co-star, Mark Wahlberg, for the same reshoot work, got $1.5 million. He later donated the entire fee to the Time's Up campaign. This led Williams to publicly speak out last year in a hearing about closing the gender pay gap, and she reported being paralysed in feelings of utility in the wake of news about the disparity, highlighting the lack of initial reaction as the most depressing element. Quite rightly, when she won the Emmy Award for Fosse Verdon, she had cause to stand up and say something of the power of fair practice in her personal fight to achieve it. Pointing out the obvious benefits of equal pay, she said, "When you put value into a person, it empowers that person to get in touch with their own inherent value. And where do they put that value? They put it into their work." But she did something else in that moment. She closed out her speech saying this: "So, the next time a woman, especially a woman of colour, because she stands to make 52 cents on the dollar compared to her white male counterpart, tells you what she needs to do in order to do her job, listen to her. Because she might just be standing up on a stage and saying, thank you for letting me succeed because of my workplace environment and not in spite of it." For that speech, she won a standing ovation from the audience. This is the third year in a row that I've given a speech on International Women's Day, and I have to say up until this morning, what I've observed, and from other women's events, is that the focus is almost primarily on the general gender pay gap as a way of gauging how well gender equity is tracking. Yet what we do, what we measure, what we hold up, says something about what we value, and importantly, it defines the narrative. So in New Zealand, how are we doing? The gender pay gap is 9.3%. This is the third smallest gap since the series began in 1998, when it was 16.3%. The unemployment rate for women is 4.4%. In recent decades, the unemployment rate for women has generally been higher than that for men, but the rate for men is still only 3.9%. In November of last year, news media reported that the pay gap between men and women in the public sector had seen its biggest drop in 17 years. Figures show that the gap in the public sector went from 12.2 to 10.5% in a year. So all of this suggests as a country we're doing well when it comes to gender equity, that women are starting to close the gap. However, the gender pay gap for Māori women is approximately double the overall gender pay gap, and it's worse for Pacific women. In the public sector, the gap for Māori women is 16.3%, while the pay gap for Pacific women is a staggering 25.6%. Generally, Māori women experience unemployment at double the rate for women overall, and again, Pacific women's unemployment rate is higher at 9.5%. Now, these are statistics that I rarely hear at International Women's Day and women's events. And recently I sat at a Women in Law conference and I endured, is the only word I can use, a whole hour of listening to a talk about the general pay gap. No mention was made of other women in the profession who may experience an intersection of challenges in addition to gender. But at least we have some measurement for Māori and Pacifica, because it gets even harder when it comes to women who are deaf or have a disability. In a recent cabinet paper, the government accepted that traditionally it has not been possible to look at the links between disability and gender-based underevaluation in the remuneration of women in the state sector due to a lack of data. And as the incredible Paula Tesorerio, who's Disability Commissioner, said in March last year, data informs what we do and how we monitor progress. So it is important that good data is collected. We're not quite there yet, but work is happening to address this. I was heartened to read an article on gender pay equity recently where researcher and public policy commentator Dr. Jess Berenson-Shaw highlighted the need for there to be fundamental change of workplace structure, which is essentially centred around able-bodied men's lives and career trajectory. But she also pointed out the need to address other types of pay gaps, pointing out that generally Pākehā women earn more than Pacific Island men and Māori men. She went on to say that if you have a Pacific Island family that's a traditional heterosexual couple, that's two people being underpaid compared to Pākehā. In a recent Twitter post, she reframed the issue around pay parity and said it's not a pay gap, it's a penalty for being a woman. Wait till you hear the penalty for not being white. When questioned about the pay gap for Pacific women last year, Dr. Karanino Sumer of the Human Rights Commission said, "We're hearing from Pacific people that they're often overlooked, so it's not that they're not putting their hands up, they're putting their hands up for progression and they're not given the opportunity." This is what I call the invisibility of certain women in the discussion around gender equality. And what that does, even on days like today when we all come together to celebrate equality, is it leaves some women out. And the reason I raise this is because something similar happened in the legal profession. As you all know, the legal profession has had to face up to a painful period of reckoning. There's no other way to put it, when it comes to gender equality in the wake of the Me Too movement. In April of 2018, the Law Society commissioned Nicole Brunton to undertake a national survey of lawyers to assess the workplace environment. It was the first of its kind. It told us that nearly a third of female lawyers had been sexually harassed during their working life and more than half had been bullied. And these figures are relatively well known. But the way that the initial news broke meant that the issues have been framed, essentially by the media, as sexual harassment against young women, primarily in large law firms. And as unacceptable as it is for sexual harassment to occur anywhere, and I want to make that clear, I also want to make the point today that the focus was far too narrow. Because when we looked at all the figures and all the data provided, particularly the recent rates of prevalence, a different picture actually emerges. Colma Brunton looked at the 5 years leading up to 2018 and found that sexual harassment in that period, using the human rights definition, was higher than average among 25 to 29-year-olds, 30 to 39-year-olds, lawyers who'd been in the profession for 3 to 10 years, and lawyers working in certain practice areas. And it goes in this order. Number 1, criminal law. Number 2, tax. Number 3, immigration. Number 4, civil litigation. It goes in that order, criminal being the top. When we looked at bullying, ethnicity was found to have a role in the prevalence of bullying. The survey indicated that the following ethnic groups reported higher than average rates of bullying, which was thought to be motivated by race. 34% of Asian lawyers, 24% of Pacific Island lawyers, 15% of Māori lawyers. Bullying motivated by race. Concerned by the fact that ethnicity clearly played a role in unacceptable behaviour, the Law Society sought a further drill down by Colma Brunton for Māori lawyers only. It was the only sample group which was big enough for us to do this, so we weren't able to do the same with other ethnicities. What we found was that the 5-year prevalence figure for sexual harassment of Māori lawyers in general was 6% higher than the average. And this definition became more marked when we used behavioural definitions. When a behavioural definition is used, the figure is 40% of all Māori lawyers have been sexually harassed in the last 5 years, compared with the average of 27%. The breakdown within this is different from the overall results. It included the fact that 29% of Māori males reported harassment, compared with 14% of all male lawyers, and 46% of Māori women versus the 40% of all women lawyers. When we looked at bullying in the workplace, 62% of Māori lawyers have been bullied, compared to the half figure. And interestingly, the bullying of Māori lawyers was more likely to have involved a woman, as either the sole perpetrator or in combination with others. So the picture that actually emerged was that a young woman lawyer aged between 25 to 39 years of colour, practising in criminal law, to a lesser extent family, immigration and tax, was the most likely to be impacted and experience unacceptable behaviour. And I have yet to see a news article tell that story. Unsurprisingly, though, it became apparent to certain women in the profession that that data was there. And as we ended 2018, there was published criticism of the Law Society and other groups for failing to give a platform to women of colour. In an article in the Women's Law Journal in 2018, a young Māori lawyer said the debate around sexual harassment and bullying to date has largely involved Pākehā women speaking out, and there has been a focus on the larger and primarily corporate law firms. It must be said that the absence of diversity within this debate does not address the wider extent of the issue. Another Māori lawyer pointed out that in the same journal that diversity as an idea has been heavily promoted but lacks impact when the conversation doesn't recognise and provide platforms for wahine Māori or other underrepresented groups to speak out. This has been a common critique of the Me Too movement globally, that is, there has been a lack of recognition of the experiences of women of colour separate to those of other women. And I also sat on a panel with Paula Tesorerio, who stood up and said to a very packed auditorium in Auckland, where was the voice of disabled women in the Me Too movement? And I had to absolutely agree with her. So what are the Law Society doing about it? That's the big question. We knew that the focus had to be wider for our culture change work, and it's why we sought the further information for Māori lawyers as a group. More importantly, the Law Society has initiated comprehensive structural change, the only thing that's going to turn the dial. A big part of our ability to change behaviour is through the regulation of the profession. Unfortunately, we have a statutory framework which highly constrains our ability to do that and to do it swiftly. So currently we're progressing changes to our rules which make it clear as to the conduct expected of all lawyers and employees of law practices, the obligations expected of those who manage and operate law practices, the obligations on all the profession to report unacceptable conduct, protections for those who report or experience unacceptable behaviour, and the introduction of mandatory education aimed at reducing unacceptable behaviour. I think more fundamentally, the Law Society is also undertaking an independent review of our entire structure and functions. As I said, this is due to the constraints the current legislation places on our ability to deal with a broad range of all kinds of behaviour, and our ability to be open and transparent about the process. Now, this step was necessary because it became clear, after further analysis by both the government and us as an organisation, that merely amending the Act was never going to be enough. In addition to that, we're building an evidence-based strategy for culture change in the profession. It means drawing on all the research reports and our own evidential data. It also means seeking data and perspectives that may be missing from the picture. It means that when we do our next salary survey, we should be asking things like ethnicity, disability, other factors which are missing. Nor is it good enough that of all the reports currently available on changing the culture of the profession, none of them have taken a completely te ao Māori or Pacifica perspective. Yet we know that those women are disproportionately affected. And it's what is often referred to by my Māori and Pacifica women lawyer friends as the sprinkling of diversity on top of the sundae that's already been assembled. They're brought in to review someone else's work at the last second. As president, I've attempted to shed light on these issues. On the first day I became president, I was asked to speak about gender equality to a group in Wellington. I went back and asked that the stage be shared with Māori, Pacifica and Asian lawyers to ensure we had the right people talking about the real issues. And from that first event to today, I've tried to ensure we don't leave anyone out. So there is much to do, and already I feel a little tired as president in the whirlwind of activity, and I'm not even 1 year in the role. But as I signed the Memorandum of Understanding with Te Hungoroa Māori, the Māori Law Society, last week at Te Papa, which was 30 years in the making, I think the partnerships we are forming and the work we are doing as an organisation to change will get us and the legal profession ultimately to our destination. So what does that mean for International Women's Day? Well, Each for Equal is one of the themes. It highlights this idea of collective individualism towards equality. I keep saying to the legal profession, if we all change a little bit, the whole profession changes a lot. And that goes for men and women. To do that, I think we need to be real about the levels of inequality which operate within women as a group. There is no doubt that race, disability, poverty all operate to make some women more equal than others. And it's not a competition. This isn't about participating in the woke Olympics. But just like Michelle Williams, who undoubtedly fought a very public battle over gross underpayment and inequality, she was still able to show up and lift the voices of other women less fortunate than her in that golden moment on the stage. So I want to finish by thanking Minister Genter, the UN Women Aotearoa New Zealand Zonta Club of Wellington for giving this stage to 2 Pacifica women. I immigrated to New Zealand as a 10-year-old from Samoa, and it's certainly a long way from the villages of Salemua in Whalealupo to this stage. And so I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I don't know if you'd told me when I was a 10-year-old stepping off a plane that all these years later I would be here. At the end of the day, this is about each of us fighting for equal for all of us, because like Beyonce once said, unless we're all free and equal, none of us are. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora koutou. Tiana. As an individual and the president of the Law Society, we see you as a role model and a force for change within your profession. Of course, this can't be you alone. It needs a groundswell of people working together for change to promote equality and ensure that everyone feels included. In your keynote, you've highlighted the significance and the importance of the growing need to recognise the voices of women of ethnicity and disability to help change the dialogue in the workplace culture. We thank you for your courage in laying down a pathway for us to follow in our own organisations. Tēnā rawa atu kai.
Thank you, Tiana. I too was a little girl from Samoa who came here not speaking any English at the age of 11 from Whasitota Inasata. So I too share this moment with you. Well, before we go for breakfast, I have a message for International Women's Day from the Right Honourable Dame Patsy Reddy, the Governor-General of New Zealand, to read to us all. Kia ora koutou. Each year on International Women's Day, we take stock of women's rights, and every year we conclude that women continue to be subjugated in varying degrees in every country in the world. The theme for this year's International Women's Day, I Am Generation Equality, Realising Women's Rights, signals that a new generation of women are determined to make further progress in the efforts to counter gender discrimination. In New Zealand, this determination is reflected in heightened awareness and vigilance about unwanted attention, harassment, and sexual predation, particularly in the workplace. We see greater commitment to female leadership in the public service, though the private sector still lags behind. The most urgent and horrifying issue has to be the scourge of domestic violence across our communities and in the deaths of New Zealand women at the hands of their partners. Empowering women and families who find themselves in those predicaments has to be a priority. As patron of UN Women Aotearoa New Zealand, I, the Governor-General, appreciate your efforts to highlight these issues and wish your members all the very best with your work in New Zealand and in the Pacific. So we will now break to enjoy our breakfast and network with your fellow colleagues beside you. We will reconvene just before 8 a.m. or maybe after 8. About 8:10 a.m., where our live streaming will move to the Grand Hall, where we will hear from our final speaker, Dr. Tokilupe Taumoepeau. But during the break, you will be seeing videos of UN Women and Zonta projects from around New Zealand and in the Pacific. Enjoy your breakfast.
What defines a generation?
Climate justice! Right now!
Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
and economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us. What defines a generation? What defines a generation?
Climate justice! Right now!
Is it just about the year you were born? Or is there something more? We may have lived through different decades, different circumstances, different countries, but we all share in the global, everyday push for our rights, for justice, for a world that is equal. Perhaps what defines our generation isn't our age or our background, but the line in the sand that we have drawn. We take to the streets to speak out against discrimination, and we work tirelessly behind the scenes. We stand up for peace.
We are fed up with the war
And economic justice. We start with a statement and watch it become a movement. We have come a long way, but the fight isn't over, and our rights are still under assault. It is time to take action. Let us be the wake-up call the world needs.
The eyes of all future generations are upon you.
Be the first, the youngest, the best, and then make sure no one is left behind. When someone tries to silence you, raise up your voice.
Let us wage a global struggle.
Change everything, or change just one thing. As long as you do something, whether you're new to changing the world or have been in the fight for a long time.
Each knows exactly why we are here.
We are all together, united for gender equality. And the future we create for women and girls is up to all of us.
Today is her 12th birthday. But because of gender inequality, poverty, and traditions, she will Today is her 12th birthday. But because of gender inequality, poverty, and traditions, she will be married before she turns 18. Becoming a child bride means a loss of opportunities. She will face increased risks of being isolated from her family and friends, dropping out of school, early pregnancy and potential complications during childbirth, domestic violence, and remaining in poverty. As she faces the same economic hardships her parents did, it is more likely that her daughter will also become a child bride. And the cycle will continue. But what if this was not the only option? What if there was a different road to take? If she does not marry young, she has a chance to stay in school, stay healthy, stay safe against domestic violence, experience greater economic opportunities, and choose when she gets married and has children. She breaks the cycle of child marriage. Instead of 12 million girls getting married each year, what if 12 million girls had options for their future? The Ending Child Marriage Project has the potential to reach 2.5 million girls in 12 countries by the end of 2019. Join Zonta International today in ending child marriage. Gender inequality, poverty, and traditions, she will be married before she turns 18. Becoming a child bride means a loss of opportunities. She will face increased risks of being isolated from her family and friends, dropping out of school, early pregnancy and potential complications during childbirth, domestic violence, and remaining in poverty. As she faces the same economic hardships her parents did, it is more likely that her daughter will also become a child bride. And the cycle will continue. But what if this was not the only option? What if there was a different road to take? If she does not marry young, she has a chance to stay in school, stay healthy, stay safe against domestic violence, experience greater economic opportunities, and choose when she gets married and has children. She breaks the cycle of child marriage. Instead of 12 million girls getting married each year, what if 12 million girls had options for their future? The Ending Child Marriage Project has the potential to reach 2.5 million girls in 12 countries by the end of 2019. Join Zonta International today in ending child marriage.
So, thank you. And you will hear from us all very shortly. Tēnā koe. I know the conversation is really flowing. And my sincerest apologies that it's taken a bit longer for us to reconvene. We had been hoping to have Dr. Tokilupe Tamopeau, our second speaker, speak at the Grand Hall, but due to technological issues beyond my own comprehension, we have not been able to do that. So apologies for the delay, and also my sincerest apologies to our attendees in the Grand Hall who had been hoping to see Dr. Lupe speak in the flesh. So we hope that it doesn't spoil the lovely morning that you're having and the inspiration that's continuing the flow amongst and between us all. Maloelele and welcome back. Tēnā koe. I hope you all enjoyed your breakfast and managed to say hi to some of the amazing wahine that we have here and tāne around you this morning. So we now have the privilege of hearing from our second exceptional guest speaker for this morning, Dr. Tokilupe Tamopeau, the first female vascular surgeon in New Zealand. Woo! Dr. Lupe has been working hard to create an enabled and equal world in the medical field and in the many spaces and places she is involved in, especially as one of only a few medical specialists in New Zealand and around the world. Dr. Tokilupe Tamopeau is a passionate advocate for women and has been encouraging more women and Pacifica people into surgical specialties. She was born into a tight-knit Tongan family where family and community were everything, and being of service to others is a key part of her work ethic. From a young age, Dr. Tokilupe was interested in a career in medicine, inspired by her grandfather, who was an eye surgeon in Tonga. And today, she is here with her proud parents, Peter and Paula Tamopeau. It is... From a Pacific sister to another Pacific sister, it is now my greatest privilege to now invite Dr. Tokilupe Tamopeau to the podium.
Thank you, Loretta, for that amazing welcome. Tēnā koutou, maloelele, and good morning. Happy International Women's Day, everyone. When Loretta invited me to speak, I angst for a long time about what I would say. So, I searched the lineup of speakers from last year's breakfast. Right Honourable Jacinda Ardern, our Minister for Women, Julianne Genter, and employment lawyer, Steph Dyberg. Oh. And then I realised that at this year's breakfast, I would be sharing the stage with Honourable Julianne Genter and the equally amazing Tiana Epati. Hopefully after today, those guys will finally accept my repeated Facebook friend requests. In all seriousness though, I feel truly honoured to take part in this special occasion. I want to share with you what this year's theme of creating an equal and enabled world means for me and women in 2020. Opportunities like this give you a chance to reflect back on your journey. I'm the eldest of 2 daughters. My sister is a pathologist. My mother was the first strong female role model I had. She taught my sister and I the importance of hard work and making the most of every opportunity. I went to a Catholic all-girls high school, which thankfully celebrated women and helped to nurture my childhood dream of becoming a doctor. Growing up, I honestly never felt like it was beyond my reach. In my world, women could do and be anything they wanted. My time at medical school, however, opened my eyes to the fact that this world was not equal and at times disabling. I completed my medical degree at the University of Auckland. I went through the Māori and Pacific admission scheme pathway. This affirmative action scheme has been attacked by critics who claim that it allows for lower quality candidates and is some sort of reverse racism. In my view, schemes like these are necessary to help achieve diversity in the health workforce in order to achieve equitable health outcomes for Māori and Pacific people in New Zealand. I had to endure comments from non-Māori and Pacific classmates about my easy ride into medical school. According to the latest census data, Pacific Islanders make up 6.6% of the population in New Zealand. The number of Pacific doctors would have to increase from 295 to 1,082 to reflect the makeup of our Pacific population. Similarly, Māori make up 14.7% of the population, but only 3.5% of New Zealand doctors. Research shows that when a health workforce is reflective of the population they serve, patients are more engaged and feel empowered to take ownership of their health, creating improved outcomes. That is why these schemes are vital, and it is heartwarming to know that these programs are enabling increasing numbers of Māori and Pacific students to become health professionals year on year. The numbers, however, are still a long way from our target. When I started at medical school, I was stoked to see that 60% of my class was female, especially when the stereotype is that women are a minority in this field. In fact, ladies, we are slowly breaking the mould. The Medical Council of New Zealand predict that based on graduate numbers, women will outnumber men in the medical workforce by 2025. That's within the next 5 years. Despite this, females make up only 34% of the specialist medical workforce in New Zealand. In Australasia, only 13% of surgeons are women. The reasons for women leaving surgical training were identified in a recently published study by Gold Coast surgeon Dr. Ria Liang. These include lack of role models, grueling workloads, challenges combining unpredictable surgical workloads with domestic commitments, and issues with bullying, sexual harassment, and discrimination. I've had to deal with all of these barriers at some point during my training and career. Dr. Liang's research showed that focusing on one aspect of a person disproportionately to their ability as a surgeon only served to isolate and objectify them. Emphasising feminine characteristics by calling a woman a female surgeon rather than a surgeon who happens to be a woman actually exaggerated genderised behaviour. And one of the fallouts was that when these women were put in the spotlight or on pedestals, good men fell silent. That is, they withdrew their mentorship and support. There was a serious lack of female surgeons when I was a junior doctor. My mentors early on were in fact male surgeons who recognised my passion for vascular surgery, but never saw me, being female or an ethnic minority, as something to highlight. To contrast this, I remember being part of a group of junior doctors applying for surgical training. I was the only female in a group of 6 other male doctors at my hospital. We were all friends, but due to unconscious bias, just before we went into our interviews, one of them turned to me and said, "Don't worry, Lupe, you're female and brown, so you're a shoo-in." Never mind the fact that I'd worked bloody hard and was capable. When I was training, it wasn't uncommon for me to work up to 75 hours a week. When sitting exams, trying to fit in another 20 hours a week of study, and surviving on pretty minimal sleep. 4 days after getting married, my husband and I moved to Wellington during my training. We basically lived our first year of married life as flatmates, hardly seeing each other. Living with this work-life imbalance for years has not been easy. I was so focused on my career from an early age that I convinced myself that I didn't want children. Thankfully, I changed my mind and realised that becoming a mother filled a gap in my life that I didn't know was there. Like for all of you working mothers, however, juggling work with home commitments comes with added pressure and guilt. Dr. Charlotte Chambers from the Association of Salaried Medical Specialists published her research findings on understanding why women aged between 30 to 40 in the specialist workforce in New Zealand have the highest prevalence of burnout. The title of her work was "Making Up for Being Female." Many women interviewed in this research conveyed a sense of struggle to stay on top of their work, and particularly so if they also sought to have time for personal activities, spend time with their spouses, or have quality time with their children. There was a real sense of having to not only prove your worth as a female doctor, but then feeling the need to take on extracurricular work activities and be part of committees like male colleagues at the expense of their families or risk not advancing their career. As women, we take on so many roles and pressures. I'm in the very fortunate position of having a supportive husband who's been the main caregiver for our son and home executive. But even though I know things are always taken care of at home, life in the last month for me has been challenging. It started with organising the perfect 5-year-old Star Wars party for 24 children and 12 adults. My son started school 3.5 weeks ago, so remembering about labelling his clothing, ensuring minimal plastic wrap in his nut-free lunchbox, and getting him to bed on time has been a battle. The last few on-call nights I've done have resulted in me being up through the night, operating until 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning, cancelling a full clinic of patients the next day and feeling bad about letting them down. My son has missed the last week of school due to illness, and to top it off, we lost our amazing family dog at the beginning of this week. I was feeling so much pressure to give an amazing keynote speech, and I angst over what I was going to say for a long time. I guess my point is that you might have come here today expecting to hear from a completely together, perfectly groomed, articulate and enlightened surgeon, when the reality is that I have struggles too. I don't think we only have to celebrate achievements like becoming a vascular surgeon. I think there is something empowering in knowing that not everybody is perfect. and that celebrating everyday successes should be encouraged. I tell you, I might be on the Capital and Coast DHB Equity Steering Group, a past selector for both the New Zealand Orthopaedic and Australasian Vascular Training programs, a successful business owner, and the newest co-opted member of the Australasian Vascular Society Executive. But do you think any of that helped me GHD my hair straight at 5 a.m. this morning? The struggle is real. I feel like part of creating an enabled world going forward is celebrating all of the little wins on the way. When it comes to bias and discrimination, my experiences in medicine have included being mistaken for the cleaner or orderly when dressed in scrubs and turning up to the ward to review a patient, constantly being referred to as a nurse because I'm female, doing a ward round with a younger male junior colleague or even a medical student and having patients and staff assume that he's the one in charge. And more recently, discovering that for the last 5 years, I have been receiving half of the on-call allowance that my male colleagues were receiving, despite being equally qualified, despite doing the same job, and despite often contributing to more on-call rosters. We've heard this morning, time and time again, that the issue of gender pay gap is significant. Thank you, Tiana, for so eloquently highlighting the gaps in this area and the widening gaps between women of ethnicity. In the medical sector, research by the ASMS shows that female specialists earn 12.5% less per hour than their male counterparts, even when adjusting for age, specialty, and weekly hours worked. Mothers are even further disadvantaged, where the gap rises to over 13% with one child and over 17% with 2 or more children. I also echo the calls from earlier this morning to adopt pay transparency to create an equal and enabled world. In my world, the message has started to infiltrate our governing body, the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons. We now have a diversity and inclusion plan with set targets on gender equity in both successful applicants to training and having more female role models in positions of leadership and in senior committee roles. An expert advisory group was set up following a damning report on bullying and sexual harassment in 2015, which has seen the successful introduction of a compulsory course for all surgeons and trainees to combat these workplace issues. Aotearoa is also moving in the right direction. We have 3 women in high-powered positions of Prime Minister, Governor-General, and Chief Justice. There is an increasing recognition of the importance of women supporting women to succeed with the formation of multiple female mentoring programs and social groups which really uplift the profile of women. We need to stay the course. Creating an equal and enabled world starts with us looking for opportunities to foster these values in our everyday lives. Awareness of our individual bias and a shift in mindset are the first steps to breaking down the inequalities that exist. This is vital for our rangatahi, our young people, for our girls, and equally important for our boys. I want to thank and congratulate UN Women Aotearoa New Zealand, the Zonta Club of Wellington, and for all of you who have done such great work in this area over many years. The opportunity to speak at this event and listen to this morning's amazing speakers has really renewed my energy and strengthened my resolve to continue overcoming these challenges in the medical sector and in my day-to-day life. So let's stay the course. Let's empower and enable one another going forward. I'd like to leave you with a quote that might help uplift us in those difficult moments which we know will lie ahead. A strong woman looks a challenge in the eye and gives it a wink. Kia kaha. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Wafafetai, wamali e mata e vai. Watasilava oe, watasilava oe, ilo unefa amoe moe. Thank you, Loretta. Dr. Tokilupe, tau moe pe au. Oia we. Whakaofa. O ku mau fia mo pelo pelo I ho o lau mea. You made us proud. Everyone here. You made us proud. Amen? Amen. On behalf of the Sonta and the UN women and all the women here, Maori, Pacifica, young women, men, Mr. Leasi, young men, everyone here, we say to you, thank you very much. Me taki maata, vinaka vakalevu, whaafetai tele lava. Kia ora. And not to forget, we wish to acknowledge your parents. Can I ask you, please, Paula and Elisabetta, to please be upstanding? Behind this doctor. Thank you, Malo Opito. It is always a dream of a Pacifica mother for her daughter to live a full potential life full of blessings, to marry a minister, to marry a palangi, to marry a millionaire. However, she's the doctor of doctor. She nurtured her daughter. She said to me, she's been asked, she's been challenged, what's the recipe for bringing this vascular doctor? She said, up there, the man up there, the good Lord gave her the blessings. Now she nurtured her. She said to me, there were 3 things that her daughter came to and told her. She said, Mom, I'm studying orthopedic. And then Mom said, orthopediology. Mom, I've studied about plastic surgery. Plasticology in the Pacific way. And finally she came, Mom, I study vascular. Now she is. Absolutely. From the doctor of doctor to the Dr. Toki Lupe Taumoepeau. Honor be to God. Glory be to God. Thank you very much. Whaafetaitele, please, would you like to come up to the front? Thank you, and kia ora whaafetaitele.
Sorry about the singing. I wasn't expecting that. This is what you do on International Women's Day. I know we need to get through our last few speakers. So without further ado, I would now like to invite the President of UN Women Aotearoa New Zealand, Suzanne McNabb, to the podium to give her address.
Kia ora koutou. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā wāhine toa, e rauranga tira mā. Ngā mihi mai oha ki a koutou. Ko Suzanne McNabb aho. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I was thinking there's rather a theme in all of the speeches today, and I thought mine echoes just a few sections of it, but of course it's too late to change anything at this point. The United Nations global theme for International Women's Day 2020 is, as you have already heard, generation equality, realising women's rights. We have a long way to go. Women are still poor. Most of the world's poor are women. Women still lack literacy. Most of those who are illiterate are women. Women still earn less, as we've just so potently heard. Up to 30% less around the globe. In Aotearoa, if you are Māori or Pacific, you earn less than Pākehā women. Women still suffer multiple forms of violence directly related to their gender. International Women's Day is an important day, but just one day in the year when we focus on these concerns and recommit ourselves to changing the world for women. Truly realising women's rights requires us all to act differently. The UN Secretary-General said recently, "Women's inequality in the 21st century should shame us all, just as slavery and colonisation shamed other generations, and it requires transformative change." Today, not a single country can claim to have achieved gender equality. Gender equality is fundamental to solving global challenges, including war and conflict and climate change. We need to step up the pace in order for our granddaughters and grandsons, nieces and nephews to live in a world where gender equality is the norm. We need to come together on International Women's Day, celebrate our achievements and draw attention to continuing gender inequality. But importantly, transformative change, realising women's rights, must be an everyday focus. UN Women is the UN global entity committed to achieving gender equality and the empowerment of women, and has programs in 14 countries in the Pacific. The programs focus on 4 significant areas: the economic empowerment of women, which of course includes issues such as getting the same on-call allowance, political empowerment, the right to participate in the parliaments, the support to do so, and leadership, eliminating violence against women, and gender responsiveness in disasters. UN Women Aotearoa supports the work in the Pacific and works for gender equality in Aotearoa. You can play a part. You can play an active role. You can pick up one of the leaflets on your table and take it with you. Sorry for the people on the live streaming, but I can send a link to the leaflet for you. You can join UN Women to work for the empowerment of women, and you could become a regular woman-to-woman donor to support the work. And you can commit to gender equality and realising women's rights, not in another 100 years, but now. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So now I have the privilege of extending thanks to the many great people, mostly women, who worked hard to make this a significant occasion. We thank the Minister of Women's Affairs, Julianne Genter, for hosting this breakfast. Heartfelt thanks to our keynote speakers, and to the wonderful women of Zonta and UN Women who've met regularly and worked hard over a number of months. Loretta, Rebecca, another Rebecca, Lynn, Sarah, Helen, Christine, Ray, Gail, Agnes, Jess, Debbie, Sarah, Rajali, Jill. A special shout out to ANZ Bank, and I know that they're having lots of live streaming sessions around the country and in Fiji. They're an empowerment partner to UN Women for the live streaming, so thanks for that. This year also, thanks to Cordia, who have made the event available on Freeview Channel 200, and to Richard, our videographer, and the team. And a very special thanks to all of you who have participated here, participated in the Grand Hall, and to the many groups and individuals who are watching this either now through the live streaming or later. Kia ora koutou.
We've now come to the conclusion of our event. So before I give my thanks, can we please be upstanding? I've just been advised, just a very short time ago, that one of our dear ministers, who used to be, who was an ex-Green Party leader, the Honourable Jeanette Fitzsimons, has just passed away. So on International Women's Day, I would like us all to have a moment of silence for 1 minute to acknowledge Jeanette and all the work that she's worked for, and also for you to acknowledge personally the women, the people that have been around you and are with you to empower you to create an enabled and an equal world. That moment starts now. Thank you all very much for acknowledging Jeanette and for all of those that you have in your mind. You can now be seated. Thank you for being here in person, and thank you for those who've joined us via live stream to celebrate International Women's Day. As has been mentioned, this breakfast is live streamed. Thank you to ANZ, whose members are also here. I acknowledge you today. I also want to acknowledge Cordia, as has been mentioned, and also all of you for making the time out of your very special day and your calendars. I know that you all are very busy, but for you to avail yourselves to be here with us all to celebrate this occasion is Fantastic, thank you. As you leave the hall today, you will receive a yellow rose, as it is Zonta's Rose Day, where all those that support women's empowerment are recognised. Official photographs will be taken, and I'd like to invite our speakers, dames, the diplomats, our secondary school students, and members of the Santa Club of Wellington and UN Women to please join us at the banquet hall. When you leave the building, please make sure you've got your security ticket with you so they can let you out of the building. And before I invite Belinda back to the podium to close this momentous event and send us on our way with a closing karakia, I want to leave you with a few pearls of wisdom and a call to action to do what you can wherever you are to realise a more equal and enabled world for all. It is my hope that you will each leave today inspired and ready to take action to enable and empower women who might be different from you so that they too can realise their potential. It is up to us to make the change that we want to see. And it is only by working together, celebrating our differences and uniqueness, and having the right and safe environment to share our authentic stories, will we be able to understand one another and move towards achieving our greatest human potential. And we must remember that we stand on the shoulders of many brave and courageous women and men who paved the way for us to be here. So let us pick up the pace, continue to press on with courage, determination, strength, and conviction to make a difference in the world, a world that is better, more enabled and equal for all girls and women and all people, so that in a year or so, we might look back and be thankful for the legacy that we have created. So for a start, as you leave this event and this building, be the reason someone smiles today and always. I'd now like to invite Belinda Himiona back to the podium to close our breakfast with a karakia. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa, e manuia soifua.
Kia ora, just to do the closing karakia to guide us as we return to our day and to take this awesome inspiration and bottled feeling from the fantastic speakers and the thoughts that have been shared into our actions going forward. So karakia whakamutunga. Kia mutua mātou mahi mō tēnei wā, manaakitanga mai mātou katoa, o mātou hoa, o mātou whānau, ai o ki te aorangi. Kia ora koutou.